Good day, everyone. My name is John Paul Paer Tejada, and today we will be discussing some of the social theories in education, particularly the consensus theory by Emile Durkheim and conflict theory by Karl Marx. So basically, these theories will help us understand how education functions in society, whether it promotes unity and order or it reinforces inequality and power differences. So we will explore the definitions of each theory, the proponents' claims on the theory, their similarities as well as their differences, and their implications in the Philippine setting, including concrete classroom examples. Now let us proceed with the definition of the two theories, and let us begin with consensus theory. So by definition, consensus theory views society as a system of interrelated parts working together to maintain social stability and order. In education, consensus theory argues that schools function to transmit shared values, norms, and skills necessary for social cohesion and the continuity of society. To elaborate, consensus theory sees society as something like a body where each part has a role. So education in this view is meant to keep society running smoothly. Schools teach students not only academic skills, but also values such as discipline, cooperation, and respect so that everyone can live and work together harmoniously. This perspective is strongly associated with Emile Durkheim, who regarded education as a moral and social institution that integrates individuals into the collective life of society. So Durkheim believed that education is essential in shaping individuals into responsible members of the society. He emphasized moral education because he thought that shared values are necessary to prevent disorder and confusion in society. So that's the definition of consensus theory. Next is the conflict theory by Karl Marx. So by definition, this theory views society as an arena of inequality and struggle among social groups competing for power, resources, and status. Education from this perspective is not neutral. Rather, it serves to reproduce existing social inequalities and maintain the dominance of privileged groups. In contrast, conflict theory argues that society is not harmonious but divided. Schools, according to this theory, do not provide equal opportunities to everyone. Instead, they often favor students who already come from privileged backgrounds, allowing inequality to continue across generations. So this theory is rooted in the ideas of Karl Marx, who argued that social institutions, including schools, reflect and reinforces class divisions present in capitalist societies. So Marx believed that education supports the capitalist system by preparing students to accept their position in this society. So schools help maintain class divisions by rewarding those who already possess economic and cultural advantages. So that's the definition of the consensus theory and conflict theory. Since we are done with the definitions of the two theories, let us now proceed to the proponents' claims on each theory. So consensus theory by Emile Durkheim. So Durkheim claimed that education serves as a mechanism of socialization. So this means teaching students shared norms, values, as well as moral discipline. And this also means that schools teach students how to behave properly in society, what is right or wrong, acceptable or unacceptable. So later on, we will explore its examples. So next is that school promotes social solidarity, particularly in modern, diverse societies. In a society with different backgrounds and beliefs, schools help create unity by teaching common values and practices. And also, Durkheim argued that education prepares individuals for their specialized roles in the division of labor. As society becomes more complex, education trains students for specific jobs and responsibilities. And moral education prevents anomy, or what we call the normlessness, by fostering respect for authority and collective rules. So Durkheim believed that without moral education, society could fall into chaos. Schools help prevent this by teaching respect for rules and authority. So those are the claims of Emile Durkheim in consensus theory and the education. So next is the conflict theory by Karl Marx. So Karl Marx basically argued that education functions as an ideological tool of the ruling class. So this means that schools spread ideas that benefit those in power, making inequality seem natural and acceptable. So this is the opposite of consensus theory. And also, according to Karl Marx, schools promote inequality as well as the culture, language, and the values of the elite. So students from wealthy families often succeed more because the school systems align with their background. And educational credentials act as the symbolic capital, limiting social mobility. Degrees and diplomas can restrict opportunities as not everyone has equal access to quality education, of course. And Karl Marx argued that the hidden curriculum teaches obedience, conformity, and acceptance of social hierarchy. So later on, we will elaborate that more. So beyond lessons, schools teach students to follow rules, right, and accept authority, preparing them for subordinate rules in the society. So that's the proponent's claim. That's the claim of Karl Marx in the conflict theory. And at this point, we might as well want to explore the similarities of the two theories. So basically, despite their opposing views, both theories first recognize education as a powerful social institution. Both agree that education plays a major role in shaping society. Next is, both theories acknowledge that schools influence values, behaviors, and social roles. So schools affect how students think, act, and see their place in society. Third, both theories explain education in relation to broader social structures. So education is connected to the economy, culture, and politics. Last is, both theories are macro-level theories, focusing on society rather than individual learners. So they analyze education at the societal level, not just classroom interaction. So that's the similarities of the two theories. And then, of course, our discussion will not be completed without applying it to the Philippines education setting. So let us now explore the implications of the two theories to education in the Philippines setting. So first is the implications of consensus theory in the Philippines. So basically, consensus theory will tell us that schools teach generally accepted norms and values. So this means that Philippine schools emphasize respect, discipline, and cooperation. And also, in consensus theory, education system follows consensual norms and values. Policies and practices reflect shared cultural expectations. So, balik-balik no. So, shared cultural and consensus, yun na, basta consensus theory. Next, students learn to agree on how to behave in some social situations. So for example, kanang mga simple nga greetings and pagsunod sa mga school and classroom rules. So students learn proper behavior through daily routines. So next is school community and stakeholders are involved in school-based management. So mo po rin nakalindun sa consensus theory because the decision making is shared among teachers, parents, and administrators. And also, education is essential to maintain the modern workforce. So this means that schools prepare students to contribute to national development. So that's some of the implications of consensus theory to in education, specifically in the Philippine educational setting. Now let us go to the conflict theory and its implication in the Philippine education setting. So first is that the educational system reinforces and perpetuates social inequalities that arise from differences in class, gender, race, and ethnicity. So conflict theory will tell us that not all students have equal opportunities, and also educational system preserves the status quo, kaya dili man fair, and push people of lower status into obedience. So education can literally limit upward mobility, and also education works as a means by which those in power stay in power. According to conflict theory, those in authority maintain control through education. Next is, according to conflict theory, the fulfillment of one's education closely linked to social class. So wealth influences influences educational setting, educational success, and I really think that this is still applicable today, right? And also, in conflict theory, schools contribute to the unequal distribution of people into jobs in society. Sad but true. And education often determines who gets high or low-paying job. So again, those were the implications of the two theories in education, particularly in the Philippine setting. And I really think that you would agree with that because it's still observable and it's still the reality, especially in the Philippine educational setting. But of course, for us to better understand the two social theories, let us look at some of its concrete examples, particularly in the Philippine classroom. So the example of consensus theory is the values education and the GMRC, or good manners at right conduct. So I really think that you are all familiar with this, right? So in many Philippine public schools, students attend edukasyon sa pagpapakataw, or the ESP or GMRC classes where values such as respect, discipline, honesty, and responsibility are emphasized. These subjects aim to develop moral citizens. This reflects the idea that schools transmit shared moral values to maintain social harmony and good citizenship, as again emphasized by Durkheim. So, muna yung unang example sa consensus theory. Next, the second example is the flag ceremony every Monday, which we can relate. So, students participate in the flag raising ceremony, singing of the national anthem, the Pledge of Allegiance, panunupa sa watawat. So, these activities, of course, build national identity, right? And these practices strengthen national identity and social solidarity, reinforcing common beliefs and loyalty to the nation. So, another example of consensus theory being applied to Philippine education setting is the classroom rules and discipline. So, of course, teachers set rules such as raising hands before speaking, wearing proper uniform, respecting authority figures, and these rules really help students learn discipline. Di ba makarelate na kami before tamuan ang mo-proceed sa ato during demo kaya naman set ng mga rules food, right? So, these rules basically teach students social order, cooperation, and discipline. So, preparing them to function properly, not just in classroom, but to the society as a whole. So that's the example of consensus theory in the Philippine educational setting. So let us now proceed to the example of conflict theory. The first example is the public versus the private school gap. So of course, private school students often have smaller class sizes, di ba? And nasa na yung mga air-conditioned rooms, better technologies, public school students may experience overcrowded classrooms, which makarelate ta, and of course, ang limited resources. And this way, education produces class inequality, as wealthier families can afford better schooling opportunities. So this is so sad, but still a reality today. So the second example is English as medium of instruction. So students from middle and upper class families often hadili always perform better in English-based subjects, so case-to-case basis. So the school system privileges the language and culture of the dominant class, while disadvantaging students from rural or low-income backgrounds. So dili siya always kanang ko iban nga, although sa public school pero mayo sila mo English gapon, but oftentimes mas privileged gud tong mga dato, no? So another example is the access to technology. So during blended or online learning, especially during the pandemic, some students have laptops and stable internet, while others rely on printed modules or shared devices. So personally, reflect ko kung ano yung makarelate mo ani. So this reflects an equal access to resources, which of course reinforcing educational inequality. So, last but not least, the fourth example of conflict theory nung ma-observe nato sa Philippine educational setting is the hidden curriculum. So, students learn unspoken lessons such as obeying authority without question, accepting grades as final judgment. So, schools implicitly teach compliance and submission, preparing students for hierarchical workplaces rather than empowering critical thinking. Kung conform mapunta kay man tao ka ng final na good like dili na mo ano. So muna ikuan sa mga example sa conflict theory na applied sa Philippine education setting. So those were some of the examples of consensus theory and conflict theory na observed sa Philippine educational setting. So that is all, and for my report, and to conclude, consensus theory highlights education's role in unity and social order, while conflict theory reveals how education can reinforce inequality. So understanding both theories allows us again, as future educators, to critically examine our practices and strive for a more equitable and inclusive educational system. So naragod na ito magkadepende whether itong ganang magamit is conflict theory ba or accessory or other theories in education. So thank you, and once again, good day. Bye. Thank you.